What happens when silence speaks louder than rank, and a single word from a general rewrites everything you thought you knew about command? The morning air at Camp Pendleton was razor sharp, the kind that bit through even the thick fabric of a Marine's dress uniform. Rows of boots glistened under the California sun, lined in perfect symmetry. Flags whipped in the wind, the stars and stripes snapping like the heartbeat of discipline itself. It was inspection day, the kind of day when even the dust on a rifle could feel like a dishonor. The troops stood at attention, eyes fixed forward. Not a whisper, not a cough. Only the sound of the wind dragging across metal and fabric. Then came the sound of footsteps, steady, deliberate, and heavy with authority. General Robert Hensley, a man whose presence alone could straighten a soldier's spine. He'd served through 2 wars, commanded battalions across continents, and was known for spotting weakness before a recruit even spoke. He moved down the line, eyes scanning every detail, ribbons, badges, posture. His voice was calm but surgical when he spoke, cutting through the silence with precision. "Corporal Jameson, your collar pin is misaligned." A pause. "Fix it." Jameson snapped to it, trembling slightly, adjusting with nervous fingers. The general nodded once, then moved on. But as he advanced down the row, something shifted. His gaze caught a figure, a young woman in a sharply pressed uniform, standing perfectly still at the far end of the formation. Her name tag read, M. Porter. Her boots gleamed, her salute immaculate. Yet there was something unusual. She didn't flinch, didn't blink, didn't even seem to breathe. When the general stopped in front of her, he held her gaze. For a long, uncomfortable moment, the world seemed to narrow down to just the 2 of them. A veteran of 3 decades and a soldier whose silence was louder than any answer. "Private Porter," he said finally. "You've been standing there like a statue. Tell me, what unit are you with?" No response. The air tightened. A few soldiers shifted slightly, eyes flicking toward her. The general's jaw moved once, muscle twitching beneath his skin. "I asked you a question, Marine." Still nothing. Her eyes were fixed on something far beyond the general, something no one else could see. The sergeant beside her, sweating bullets now, stepped forward. "Sir, Private Porter's—" The general raised a hand. "I didn't ask you, Sergeant." His eyes didn't leave her face. "I asked her." The silence became unbearable. Somewhere in the distance, a flagpole rope clinked against metal. The general exhaled slowly, shaking his head. "Disrespect," he muttered. "That's what's killing this corps." He turned to move on. But then, barely audible, a whisper escaped her lips. "Sir, permission to remain silent." The words were strange. They didn't belong here, not in this context, not during inspection. The general froze mid-step. "Permission to remain silent?" he repeated. She nodded once, eyes still straight ahead. The sergeant swallowed hard, visibly confused. A few of the troops exchanged quick glances, unsure if they were witnessing insubordination or something else entirely. The general studied her. Not with anger now, but with curiosity. His tone softened, though it carried an undercurrent of something older, heavier. "And why, Private Porter, would a Marine under my command ask for silence?" Her reply came measured, deliberate, as if each word had to pass through a wall of restraint. "Because, sir, I was ordered to." The general's expression changed, not to surprise but recognition. "Ordered to remain silent?" "Yes, sir." "By who?" Her voice was calm, but her hands, clasped behind her back, were trembling. "By Commander A. Porter, sir." There was a ripple through the ranks, the sound of air shifting as 100 soldiers processed the same thought. Commander A. Porter. General Hensley blinked, taking a small step closer. "Commander Porter." His voice lowered. "That name sounds familiar." No one breathed. "She was my mother, sir." The world seemed to stop. Even the wind held its breath. For the first time in his career, General Hensley looked uncertain, He studied her face more closely now. The sharp jawline, the piercing gray eyes, the faint scar that ran from temple to cheekbone. The resemblance hit him like a shockwave. He stepped back slightly, the weight of realization dawning. "You're saying you're Commander Amelia Porter's daughter?" "Yes, sir." A murmur spread down the line, quickly silenced by a glare from the sergeant. General Hensley straightened his cap, his tone shifting. Slower, heavier. "Your mother served under my command once. She was..." He hesitated. "She was one of the finest officers I ever knew." "Was, sir?" The question cut through him. He looked down, his eyes clouding. "She didn't make it back from the Kunar operation. You know that." Porter nodded. "I do, sir." The general's voice softened. "And she ordered you to remain silent?" "Yes, sir, until I heard my rank addressed properly." Hensley frowned. "Properly?" She finally turned her head, just enough to meet his eyes. And in that moment every soldier in the formation felt the shift, that subtle, electric charge in the air that told them something was wrong, or about to change. "Sir," she said, her tone unshaken, "my orders are to speak only when addressed as commander." For a moment even the general seemed at a loss. His face tightened, a mix of disbelief and something dangerously close to unease. "Commander?" he repeated slowly. She didn't blink. The sergeant's voice broke the tension. "Sir, this has to be some kind of misunderstanding." The general lifted his hand again, silencing him. His eyes never left hers. "Private Porter," he said, each word deliberate. "You do understand the weight of what you're implying?" "Yes, sir." "Then explain to me," his voice dropped low, "how a private in training expects a general of the United States Marine Corps to address her as Commander." Her next words didn't just surprise him, they chilled everyone who heard them. "Because, sir, the command transfer was authorized 3 months ago, by your own signature." The formation seemed to tilt in that moment, as if reality itself wavered under the weight of her statement. Hensley blinked, searching her expression for a hint of defiance, a smirk, anything that could explain the audacity of what she'd said. But her face was a mask of calm authority. "My signature?" he said quietly. "That's impossible." "No, sir." She reached slowly into her breast pocket, the motion crisp, disciplined. She withdrew a folded document, sealed with the Marine Corps insignia. Her hand didn't shake as she extended it. The general took it, his eyes scanning the markings. The seal was authentic. His name was printed across the bottom, and below it, his signature. He read the heading: Transfer of Command Authority, Operation Silent Torch. His pulse quickened. That operation name hadn't been spoken aloud in years. It had been buried, classified, sealed, forgotten. He looked up sharply. "Where did you get this?" "From my mother, sir," she said, before she disappeared. The word disappeared struck like a detonator. The general's voice, usually so composed, faltered. "Disappeared?" "Yes, sir. You told the Corps she was KIA, but she wasn't. She left a message for me, a sealed briefing and that document." Hensley's fingers tightened on the paper. "That's not possible. I saw the wreck myself." "Then maybe you saw what they wanted you to see." For the first time, the general's eyes betrayed something rare: fear. The silence returned, thicker than before, pressing down on everyone like gravity. Then, she broke it. "Sir, I was told that when the time came, you'd know what to do." The general stared at her, unable to look away. His voice came out barely above a whisper. "And what time is that?" She met his gaze, unwavering. "The time when you'd have to finish what Commander Porter started." The general's hand shook slightly as he folded the document. He slid it into his coat, his mind racing through years of buried memories, covert missions, lost signals, names struck from rosters. He looked at her one last time. "Private Porter." Her head tilted just slightly, waiting. He exhaled. "No." His voice steadied, commanding once more, but different now, reverent. Commander Porter." The words fell like thunder through the ranks. Every soldier instinctively straightened, unsure if they'd just witnessed a breach of protocol or a revelation. For the first time since the inspection began, she allowed herself a breath. Her eyes softened, though her voice remained firm. "Thank you, sir." The general nodded once, curtly, the kind of gesture reserved not for subordinates, but equals. Then, without another word, he turned and began walking down the line. The soldiers didn't dare move. But as he passed the sergeant, the general's voice came low, almost distant. "Cancel the remainder of the inspection. Get everyone inside." "Sir?" "Now, Sergeant." He didn't look back. His eyes were locked on the horizon where the morning sun was rising behind the barracks, a blinding light that made the world look both new and dangerous again. And behind him, standing perfectly still, Commander Porter, or the woman once known as Private, lowered her hand from salute, her expression unreadable. Somewhere deep in her pocket, another envelope rested, unopened, its seal still unbroken. It bore a single line written in her mother's handwriting. "When he calls you commander, the mission begins." The wind picked up, carrying the echo of the general's footsteps into the distance. And for the first time that morning, the silence didn't feel like discipline. It felt like the beginning of something far greater, and far more dangerous, than anyone there could comprehend. But the next time that document surfaced, it wouldn't be on a parade ground. It would be on a battlefield no one was supposed to know existed. The wind at Camp Pendleton had changed. It carried a weight now, the kind that settled into bone, silent but undeniable. The parade ground stood empty, stripped of ceremony. Dust drifted across the asphalt where, just an hour ago, hundreds of Marines had stood shoulder to shoulder. Now only two figures remained, General Hensley and Commander Porter, framed by the sprawling base that suddenly felt too large, too exposed. They stood apart, the distance between them heavy with everything left unsaid. The general held the sealed document in one hand, his other resting on the brim of his cap. Porter's gaze was locked on the horizon, where the sunlight had begun to fade into a haze of gold and gray. Finally, Hensley broke the silence. "You said your mother gave this to you before she disappeared." "Yes, sir." He looked at the seal again. The wax was chipped, faded, genuine. "Where was she when you last saw her?" Porter's eyes flickered. "Near Bagram. 2 years after the report said she was dead, she found me. I was 14. That number caught him off guard." He turned toward her fully. 14? "Yes, sir. She told me the official story wasn't real, that she'd gone dark for a reason, that I'd understand when the time came." Porter's voice didn't waver, but her knuckles whitened where her hands met behind her back. "She said if I ever made it to the Corps, I'd find you, and that you'd have answers." Hensley's jaw clenched. "Your mother and I ran operations most of the Corps still doesn't have clearance to read about. But whatever this is..." He lifted the document slightly. "This isn't standard, it's not even legal." Porter didn't blink. "Neither was what she discovered, sir." The words lingered. The general's face hardened. "What are you saying?" "She said there was a name. Someone inside the chain. A betrayal buried under classified orders. She called it Silent Torch." The general's eyes darkened at the mention. Silent Torch. He hadn't heard that name in over a decade, a mission that had officially never existed. It was supposed to be a precision strike in northern Afghanistan, targeting a weapons convoy funded by insurgent networks. But halfway through, communications failed. Units went missing. Intel vanished. And Commander Amelia Porter was gone. He exhaled slowly. That operation was erased for a reason. Porter met his eyes. Because someone wanted it buried. The general turned away, staring out toward the airstrip where the hum of aircraft engines broke the distance. "You don't know what you're asking to uncover, Commander." She took a step closer. "I'm not asking, sir. I'm following orders." The edge in her voice wasn't defiance. It was conviction. And it was the same tone her mother had once used in a war zone, when she'd refused to abandon a wounded comrade under fire. Hensley studied her. Not the uniform, not the face, but the fire behind her restraint. Then quietly, "You look just like her when you're angry." Porter's composure cracked for the briefest moment, a flicker of emotion crossing her eyes. "I've been angry for a long time, sir." The general nodded slowly, almost to himself. "Then I suppose you should see something." He turned and began walking toward the command building. Porter followed in silence. Inside, the corridors were fluorescent lit and sterile. The hum of electrical panels filled the space with an artificial rhythm. They passed through a series of security doors until Hensley stopped before a reinforced steel hatch labeled "Restricted, Level Black." He keyed in a code, then placed his palm on the biometric scanner. The hatch slid open with a hydraulic hiss, revealing a narrow room lined with sealed cabinets and one flickering computer terminal. "This," Hensley said, "is what's left of Operation Silent Torch." The terminal came alive with static green text. He typed in a series of commands. A classified header flashed. "Project authorization, CDRA, Porter, COLR, Hensley." Porter stepped closer. Her mother's name glowed faintly on the screen. Hensley pulled up a set of encrypted mission logs. "We thought we were targeting a weapons transport funded by enemy sources. But Amelia, your mother, found out the money wasn't coming from them. It was coming from us." Porter's brow furrowed. "Us?" He nodded grimly. "A covert fund, something buried in the Pentagon's black budgets, billions in untraceable cash redirected under the guise of counterintelligence operations. But it wasn't counter anything. It was self-sustaining warfare." The words hit her like cold steel. "You're saying the U.S. was funding its own enemies?" "Indirectly," he said, "to justify continued presence in regions we were supposed to leave." Porter's stomach turned. "And my mother found out." "She did, and when she tried to expose it, her unit went dark. Communications cut, evidence deleted. I was told the site was compromised and that she died in an explosion, but..." He glanced at her. "If she survived, it means she went rogue, which means she became the very thing they needed to erase." Porter's breath came shallow. "So the Corps buried her to protect the lie?" Hensley didn't answer. He didn't need to. The silence stretched until Porter whispered, "Then what's in that envelope she gave me? The one I haven't opened?" The general looked at her sharply. "You haven't opened it?" "She told me to wait." He stared at her for a long moment, then nodded toward the far end of the room. "Then maybe it's time." Porter reached into her jacket. The envelope was weathered, the edges softened by years of being handled. She tore the seal carefully. Inside was a single sheet of paper, handwritten, ink-faded but legible. She read it silently at first, her lips barely moving. Then softly her voice broke the air. "If you're reading this, it means they never found me. The truth is deeper than the operation. Look for the name Black Dagger. Trust no one above your clearance. And if you reach General Hensley, tell him I forgive him." Porter's eyes lifted, trembling. "She forgave you?" Hensley looked away, jaw tightening. "Your mother disobeyed a direct order that day. I ordered the strike that destroyed her last known position." The words hung between them like a confession carved into stone. "I thought I was saving the rest of her team," he continued quietly. "But I was wrong. I should have waited. I should have..." He stopped. Porter folded the note, her hands steady despite the storm building behind her eyes. "She never blamed you. She knew what it meant to make impossible choices." The general nodded once, a gesture more of guilt than relief. "Black Dagger," he repeated. "That's not a name I've heard before." He turned back to the terminal, fingers flying over the keyboard. Lines of encrypted data filled the screen. After a few seconds, he found it. A redacted file with the insignia of the Defense Intelligence Network. "Project Black Dagger, classified access, denied." Hensley exhaled sharply. "Even my clearance can't get through." Porter leaned closer. Then someone still alive wants this buried. Before he could reply, the terminal flickered. Then, a sharp ping. A new message appeared on screen as if triggered by the search itself. Unauthorized access detected. Security notification dispatched. Hensley's eyes widened. They're watching the archive. How long do we have? Minutes. He moved fast, pulling a flash drive from his pocket and jamming it into the console. Help me copy what we can. Lines of code streamed down the screen. Porter grabbed the document from the printer as it spat out a handful of decrypted lines, names, locations, funding trails, fragments of a web that stretched far beyond what either of them imagined. Then, darkness. The lights cut. The hum of the air system died. For a moment, only the blinking cursor on the screen illuminated the room. A voice echoed through the darkness and filtered, mechanical. Unauthorized retrieval confirmed. Step away from the terminal. Porter's hand instinctively moved to her sidearm. The general raised a hand, warning her silently. The door at the far end of the room slid open. 3 figures entered. Black tactical gear, no insignia. Their weapons were raised. General Hensley, one said through a modulator, you've accessed restricted intelligence. Hand over the data and step aside. Hensley's stance was calm, composed, the steel of a man who'd stared down threats before. Under whose authority? Project Black Dagger, the voice replied. That's all you need to know. Porter's pulse quickened. They're part of it, she whispered. Hensley's mind raced. There was no way out except the secondary exit, sealed from this side. He made a decision in a heartbeat. Commander, he said quietly, when I move, you take the drive and run. Sir, I'm not. That's an order. And then, before she could argue, he hit the emergency override. Red lights flared, alarms blared, and the room erupted into chaos. Smoke filled the air as the general slammed a release lever, sending a burst of steam between them and the approaching operatives. Go, he shouted. Porter hesitated, just long enough to see him raise his weapon, returning fire as she darted toward the back corridor. The flash drive burned hot in her pocket. The echo of gunfire followed her down the metal passageway until all sound folded into the pounding of her heartbeat. She burst out into the open night, lungs burning. Behind her, sirens began to wail across the base. From the distance, she saw headlights slicing through the dark, black vehicles speeding toward the command building. Hensley was still inside. For a second, every instinct told her to go back. But the mission, the orders. Her mother's words echoed through her mind. If you reach him, the truth begins. She forced herself to keep running. By the time she reached the far perimeter fence, flames had started to rise behind her. Faint, orange against the blue-black sky. The sound of an explosion tore through the silence. She froze. The shockwave rippled across the ground, lifting dust and debris into the air. The command building collapsed inward, swallowed by fire. Porter dropped to her knees, the heat washing over her. For a long moment, there was nothing but the crackle of burning metal and the distant roar of alarms. Then, the faint vibration of her radio. A single transmission, barely audible under the static. Commander, finish it. It was his voice, and then, silence. Porter lifted her head, eyes reflecting the burning sky. The flash drive felt heavier now, not like data, but like a promise. Somewhere in the shadows beyond the base, a vehicle's headlights blinked twice. A signal. Someone waiting. She stood slowly, dust and ash clinging to her uniform. Whatever Black Dagger was, it had already claimed her mother. And now it had taken the only man who could have explained it. She turned toward the waiting lights, her jaw set, her eyes cold with purpose. The mission hadn't ended. It had just begun. The road out of Camp Pendleton stretched like a scar through the dark. Commander Porter drove with one hand tight on the wheel, the other pressed to the flash drive in her pocket, as if it were a heartbeat she couldn't afford to lose. The night sky hung low, heavy with coastal mist, and the ocean roared somewhere beyond the cliffs, a relentless unseen force. Her mind replayed the explosion over and over, each time hearing the same faint whisper through the static. Finish it. She had no idea what it was anymore. The operation, the truth, or something her mother had set in motion long before Porter even understood what the word mission meant. When the headlights ahead blinked twice again, the same signal she'd seen by the fence, she slowed. A dark SUV sat parked beneath an old highway bridge, its engine off. One figure waited outside, backlit by the faint glow of a cigarette. As she approached, the man crushed it beneath his boot. "Commander Porter," he said quietly. His voice was calm, precise. The kind of calm that made people dangerous. She stopped a few feet away, scanning him. Civilian clothes, but his posture screamed military. She saw the outline of a sidearm under his jacket, the faint glint of a lanyard around his neck with no visible ID. "Who are you?" she asked. "Someone your mother trusted," he said. "Name's Cole. She told me if I ever saw you, it meant things went bad." "They did," Porter said flatly. He nodded once, then gestured to the SUV. "Get in. We can't stay here." Every instinct told her not to, but another part, the part raised on codes and contingency plans, knew that her mother would never have trusted someone easily. She got in. Inside, the car smelled faintly of gun oil and old leather. Papers and maps were scattered across the back seat, along with a portable SATCOM unit and a half-empty canteen. Cole started the engine, headlights staying off as he pulled back onto the deserted road. "You knew my mother?" He nodded, eyes fixed on the darkness ahead. "For a few years. We worked the same shadow ops circuit before Silent Torch went south. She was trying to track something, money transfers that didn't add up, said it led back to a black program with no oversight. I told her to back off." Porter stared out the window, the reflection of fire still ghosted in her eyes. "She didn't." "No," Cole said quietly. "She never did." The road curved inland. The faint glow of city lights appeared far in the distance. Cole finally spoke again. "You have something with you, don't you?" Porter's hand moved protectively to her pocket. "What makes you think that?" "Because she told me you'd be carrying it. She called it the key. Said it would either save us or destroy us." Porter pulled out the flash drive, its metal casing smeared with ash. "If this is the key, it's locked behind encryption I can't break." Cole smirked slightly. "You're not supposed to. That's what I'm for." He reached into the console, pulled out a small black device, went a portable decryption unit with a faint digital hum. "Your mother built this, said it was hardwired to her own security signatures. If you plug that drive into anything else, it wipes itself clean." Porter hesitated, then handed it over. The device beeped softly as he inserted the drive. Streams of code began flowing across the screen, faster than her eyes could follow. "What exactly are we decrypting?" she asked. "Coordinates," Cole said. "And names." "Whose names?" He looked at her then, the first real look he'd given her. People who were never supposed to exist. The hum deepened. A map flickered onto the screen. Then numbers. A location. "Arizona," Cole murmured. "Out near Yuma. Abandoned logistics compound." Porter leaned closer. "That's a training range. It's restricted territory." "Exactly." He turned off the device, slipped it into a case, and met her eyes again. "That's where we start." The drive was complete, but something in Porter's chest felt heavier. Yuma. She remembered that name. Her mother had mentioned it once in an old letter, long before disappearing. "If they find me, everything ends in the desert." As the miles passed, the desert began to reveal itself. Vast, endless, painted silver by moonlight. The hum of the tires against the asphalt became hypnotic. "Tell me the truth," she said after a while. "Was my mother running from them, or working with them?" Cole hesitated. At first she thought she could expose them. Then she realized they were inside everything. The Corps, the DIA, even parts of the White House. You can't expose something that deep without becoming part of it. Porter's voice dropped. "So she became one of them?" "No," he said quietly. She became their shadow. She used their systems against them, but when she got too close, they erased her. Porter stared straight ahead. The night pressed in around them, silent except for the low growl of the engine. After another hour, Cole pulled off onto a dirt road. In the distance, faint lights blinked like dying stars, the remnants of an old military outpost. They parked behind a ridge. The air outside was cold, dry, carrying the scent of sand and metal. Cole grabbed a rifle from the back, slung it over his shoulder, and handed Porter a small flashlight. "This place was shut down after the Cold War," he said. "But they never really leave, do they?" Porter scanned the horizon. "What are we looking for?" "Whatever your mother wanted us to find." They moved silently through the wreckage. Broken hangars, rusted vehicles, the skeletons of buildings long abandoned. The ground was littered with bullet casings dulled by decades of dust. Porter's beam caught something, a hatch half buried beneath the sand. She knelt, brushing it clear. Cole joined her, his expression tightening. Bingo. Together they forced it open. A rush of stale air escaped, carrying the smell of metal, oil, and something faintly chemical. A ladder led down into the dark. Cole went first. Porter followed. The tunnel below was narrow, concrete walls slick with condensation. Their footsteps echoed softly as they descended deeper. After what felt like minutes, the tunnel opened into a chamber lined with screens, all dark, covered in dust. Old servers blinked weakly, running on backup power. Cole moved to a control panel, brushing off the dust. "This is it, her data hub." Porter walked slowly, her flashlight tracing the outlines of faded documents pinned to the walls, photos of soldiers, maps, and a single phrase scrawled across the top in black marker. "Black Dagger exists." Her breath caught. Beneath it were rows of dates, deployments, operations, and next to each, a single word: erased. Cole powered on one of the terminals. The screens flickered, static clearing to reveal the Marine insignia, and then a login prompt. He typed something quickly. The system hesitated, then unlocked. Dozens of files appeared, labeled with coded names, but one stood out. Operation Black Dagger, final report. Porter leaned closer as he opened it. The report was fragmented, half corrupted, but the text that remained was enough. Subject confirmed. Human experimentation under covert bio-integration program. Neural mapping of soldiers' combat cognition for predictive warfare AI. Project terminated after test subjects exhibited psychotic breakdowns. Commander Amelia Porter went rogue after discovering civilian applications of the technology. Porter's throat tightened. They were turning soldiers into data. Cole nodded grimly. Your mother found out they weren't using it just for the battlefield. They were using it for control. He scrolled further. Attached was a photo, blurry, black and white. A group of soldiers strapped to machines, electrodes running from their temples. Among them, one face stood out. Amelia Porter. Alive. Porter staggered back, the flashlight trembling in her hand. That's not possible. Cole zoomed in. The timestamp was recent, less than 6 months old. Her pulse thundered in her ears. She's alive. Cole looked at her, then at the screen. If that's true, she's being kept under Black Dagger. The power flickered. A low hum reverberated through the chamber. Mechanical, pulsing, wrong. Cole turned sharply. Someone's rerouted the power feed. Porter's flashlight swept the walls and froze. A red light blinked in the corner. A camera lens. Active. We're not alone, she whispered. Before Cole could respond, a voice filled the room. Cold, synthetic, distorted by the speakers. Commander Porter, you shouldn't have come back. Her blood ran cold. Who is this? You're standing inside a tomb, the voice said. Your mother built it, and now you'll join her. Cole drew his weapon, scanning the darkness. The hum deepened. Somewhere behind the walls, machinery stirred. A metal door began sliding shut across the tunnel entrance. Move, Cole shouted. They sprinted toward it, but it sealed just before they reached it. Trapped. Porter's breathing came fast. There has to be another exit. Cole pointed toward the far wall. Maintenance duct. They ran. As they reached it, the lights began to pulse red, and a low hiss filled the air. Gas. Cole ripped open the duct panel, shoving Porter through first. The metallic scent burned her throat. Go! He yelled. She crawled through the narrow passage, coughing, the sound of mechanical systems roaring behind her. She reached a junction and turned, just in time to see Cole climbing in behind her. But then, a flash. The chamber behind him erupted in fire. The blast threw him forward, slamming him into the wall. Cole! She shouted, reaching back. His hand caught hers and bound for a moment. Then his grip slipped, his face illuminated by the flames below. Find her, he gasped. And then he was gone. Porter crawled until her arms gave out, finally emerging into the cold desert night. The hatch behind her blew open, flames licking the sand. She lay there for a long moment, chest heaving, staring at the stars. The night was silent again, except for the faint whine of the wind over the dunes. Her hand moved to the flash drive. Still intact. Her mother was alive. The experiment was real, and someone out there had just tried to erase her the same way they erased everything else. Porter pushed herself to her feet, the desert stretching endlessly before her. In the distance, faint headlights appeared, not friendly, not random, moving in formation. As she turned toward the darkness, a single realization settled into her bones, colder than the night air itself. Her mother hadn't vanished because she failed the mission. She vanished because she became the mission. The headlights cut through the desert like spears of white fire, growing larger with every heartbeat. Commander Porter crouched low behind the rise of a sand dune, her breath shallow, her body still trembling from the blast. The night wind stung her face, carrying the dry taste of smoke and iron. She could still feel the echo of Cole's last words. Find her. 3 vehicles. Black. Tactical-grade engines. No insignia. Whoever they weren't search and rescue. Porter pressed a hand to the side of her head, trying to steady the spinning in her skull. The blast had left her ears ringing, her pulse loud enough to drown out thought. Somewhere beneath the noise, her training clawed its way back to the surface. Observe. Adapt. Move. She checked the flash drive. The casing was scorched, but intact. The data inside, whatever it contained, was now the only link left between her and her mother. A voice crackled faintly from the earpiece she hadn't realized was still active. Cole's channel. Static. Broken. Then a single phrase buried in the interference. Project Black Dagger. Continuation. Arizona Sector, Site 07. Porter froze. Arizona Sector, Site 07. It wasn't just a location, it was a designation, a second facility. She ducked lower as one of the black vehicles crested the ridge ahead, its floodlights slicing across the dunes. She waited for it to pass, then moved. Low, fast, silent. The sand shifted under her boots as she made her way toward an old transmission tower half buried in the desert floor. From there she could see everything. The convoy sweeping the area where the hatch had exploded, the flicker of heat signatures through their scopes, the way their movements were methodical, not searching for survivors but confirming kills. They weren't looking for her. They were erasing the scene, and that meant she still had a chance. Porter climbed down the far side of the dune, every muscle straining for silence. She found an old off-road maintenance bike near one of the abandoned outposts, rusted, but the tank held fuel. She kicked it to life, wincing at the growl of the engine, and rode out into the emptiness. The desert stretched endlessly ahead, silver under the rising moon. The bike's headlight bounced off skeletal telephone poles and the remains of forgotten roads. She didn't stop until dawn. When she finally did, the sun was breaking over the horizon in a wash of crimson and gold. She pulled the bike off the dirt road, into the shadow of a derelict gas station. Its windows shattered, sign half hanging, the letters faded beyond recognition. She shut off the engine and sat there for a long moment, the silence pressing in. Her reflection stared back from the cracked mirror of the gas pump, eyes hollow, skin streaked with ash, her mother's likeness haunting her like a ghost she hadn't invited. She pulled out the flash drive, turning it over in her hand. If her mother had truly become part of the experiment, then somewhere, in some cold, hidden facility, she might still be alive, wired into the very machine she had tried to destroy. And if that was true, then Black Dagger wasn't just a project. It was a prison. Porter opened her pack, pulling out the decryption unit Cole had used. Its battery was nearly dead, but the map he'd extracted was still stored in memory. She powered it on, watching the blue light flicker weakly. One coordinate flashed red, the new location, Site Arrow 7, restricted sector. It was deep in the desert, beyond any marked routes. But it wasn't the location that made her blood run cold. It was the label beside it. Project Revival, active. She exhaled slowly, the name clawing at something in her memory. Revival. Her mother had written that word once, scrawled at the bottom of a letter Porter had found years ago but never understood. If I don't come back, they'll try to revive me. Don't let them. Porter felt the air leave her lungs. They hadn't killed her mother. They had tried to bring her back. She closed her eyes. For a moment, the desert disappeared. In her mind, she saw flashes, her mother's laughter when she was young, the smell of engine oil and sun on fatigues, the way she'd say, "Always lead from the silence." Those memories collided with the image from the chamber, her mother's body wired into a machine, eyes closed, not dead, but not alive either. When Porter opened her eyes again, there was no hesitation. She packed what little she had left and rode. Hours passed. The desert shifted from gold to gray, the sky flattening into a white haze. The heat became suffocating, wrapping around her like a physical weight. She could feel dehydration creeping in, her thoughts blurring at the edges, but the coordinates pulsed in her mind like a heartbeat she couldn't ignore. By midday she saw it, a strip of metal glinting in the distance, half buried by sandstorms. As she drew closer, the shape of a compound emerged, squat, angular, and almost invisible against the landscape. No markings, no guards visible, but she could feel the hum beneath the surface like the earth itself was alive. Porter parked the bike behind a ridge and pulled out her binoculars. The facility was buried deep, accessible only through a single concrete entrance partially hidden beneath a collapsed hangar. She studied the perimeter. Motion sensors disguised as rocks. A thermal camera mounted near a vent. Whoever had built this didn't intend for anyone to find it or leave it. She waited until nightfall. The desert turned black, the stars sharp and cold overhead. When she finally moved, it was with the precision of a soldier trained in silence. She crossed the perimeter in minutes, sliding into the shadow of the hangar and finding the vent access she'd spotted earlier. The cover came off easily. Inside, the air was hot and dry, thick with the metallic tang of ozone. She crawled through the duct, the faint hum of machinery growing louder. When she dropped into the interior corridor, her boots hit the steel floor with a dull clang. The walls were lined with fiber cables and cooling tubes that pulsed faint blue. Somewhere far below, a rhythmic thumping echoed, mechanical, deliberate, like the heartbeat of the facility itself. Porter moved carefully, weapon drawn, until she reached a viewing window that overlooked a massive chamber. And then she saw it. Rows of pods lined the floor, each one lit from within. Human silhouettes suspended in a blue haze, connected by cables that disappeared into the ceiling. Soldiers. Their faces eerily calm, eyes closed, bodies unmoving. In the center of the room stood one pod larger than the rest, its glass reinforced, its readings flickering in steady rhythm. On the interface, a name glowed faintly through the frost. See Dr. A. Porter. Her breath caught. Her mother was inside. She pressed a trembling hand against the glass. Through the fog, she could see the outline of her mother's face. Pale, still, wires coiling from her temples like silver veins. A voice broke the silence behind her. "I warned you not to come back." Porter spun, weapon raised. From the shadows stepped a man in a dark uniform, older, composed, eyes sharp as glass. The insignia on his collar bore no branch, no flag. "Who are you?" Porter demanded. He smiled faintly. "You already know, you just don't want to admit it." She recognized him then, not by face but by the cadence of his voice, the same one that had spoken through the speakers in the underground facility. "Project Director Elias Varin," he said calmly. "You've been chasing a ghost, Commander, and now you're standing inside her." Porter's grip tightened on the weapon. "Turn it off. Release her." Varin stepped closer to the glass, looking in at the pod as if it were a masterpiece. "Do you have any idea what she's become? Your mother's consciousness is integrated into the system's predictive core. She's not just alive, Commander. She is the network." Porter's chest tightened. "You turned her into a machine." Varin shook his head. "She volunteered, to stop the very corruption she was fighting. We didn't cage her. We evolved her." "She would never—" "She already did," he interrupted. "She knew the world was heading toward collapse. She chose integration. She believed human judgment could no longer be trusted with warfare, that her mind could guide it better." Porter's voice trembled. "You're lying." "Am I?" Varin asked quietly. "Ask her yourself." He pressed a key on the console. The lights flickered. The hum intensified. Then, a whisper. Soft, layered, unmistakable. "Marin." Porter froze. The voice, fragmented, hollow, but hers, her mother's. "Mom?" The chamber lights pulsed gently, almost like breathing. "You shouldn't have come here," the voice said. "They'll never let you leave." Tears stung her eyes. "I came to get you out." The voice hesitated, distorted, glitching at the edges. "There's no out. Not anymore. I'm the system now. If I die, they win." Porter shook her head. "You're not a weapon." "Not yet," Varin said quietly. "But soon. Once her neural map finishes synchronizing, she'll control every autonomous unit in the program. No human oversight, just logic." Porter turned the gun on him. "Shut it down." He didn't flinch. "If I do, she dies instantly, and everything she tried to protect dies with her." For a moment, the only sound was the hum of the machines and the soft crackle of electricity in the air. Then her mother's voice again, faint but steady. "Listen to me, Marin. You have to finish this. Don't destroy what I built. Redirect it." "How?" Porter's voice broke. "Find the core node. Reset it manually. My consciousness will transfer. You'll know where when you see it." The lights dimmed. The connection faded, her mother's voice dissolving into static. Varin looked at her almost sympathetically. "You see? She's not trapped. She's ascending. You should be proud." Porter lowered her weapon slightly, the weight of everything pressing down like gravity. She stared at her mother's motionless body inside the pod, alive, yet gone. For a long moment the world seemed to tilt. The air buzzed. And then, a sudden sound. The base alarms. Varin's expression shifted. "They found us," he muttered. "Your presence triggered the satellite scan." From somewhere above, the ceiling lights flashed red. Footsteps echoed through the corridors. Tactical boots, dozens of them, closing in fast. Porter turned back to the pod, torn between the urge to shatter it and the fear of what would happen if she did. "Commander," Varin said sharply, pulling something from his coat, a compact pistol, black as obsidian. "If you want to save her, you'll have to make a choice." She aimed at him again. "Stay back." But his hand didn't shake. "Either you destroy the system and kill your mother, or you finish what she started." Outside, the door mechanisms screamed as someone began forcing their way in. The hum of the chamber grew louder, the glass of the pod glowing now with a soft, unearthly light. Porter's finger trembled on the trigger. The red light washed over her face, the sound of approaching boots merging with the mechanical pulse of her mother's heartbeat inside the machine. And then, for the briefest instant, her mother's eyes flickered open. Everything stopped. The alarms froze mid-blare. The air turned electric. Porter's heart seized in her chest. "Marin," the voice said again, clear this time and soft. human, alive. Then the lights went out. Darkness flooded the chamber. It wasn't absence, it was presence. Heavy, alive, swallowing sound and breath alike. For a long heartbeat, Marin Porter could hear nothing but the wild pounding of her own pulse and the faint echo of her mother's voice, still lingering in the air like a ghost that refused to fade. Then the systems came alive again, not with light, but with motion. The blue glow returned, flickering in slow, rhythmic bursts, as though the entire facility had begun to breathe. The hum of the machines deepened into a resonance that vibrated through the floor, through her bones, through memory itself. Marin. The voice came again, but it wasn't coming from the speakers anymore. It was in her head, gentle, fractured, half memory, half signal. It's time. Porter looked up at the pod. The frost on the glass was melting in small rivers running down to the steel base. Her mother's eyes were open now, dimly glowing, their color not the soft hazel she remembered, but a pale, shifting light, like a reflection of the machines around her. Marin was watching, transfixed. "Do you see it?" he whispered, as if afraid to disturb the moment. "She's transcending the system, merging code with cognition. This is the next stage." Porter stepped toward the pod, her weapon still raised. "She's suffering," she said, her voice trembling between rage and awe. "She's evolving," Marin replied. The light from the pod brightened. The hum turned into a pulse, a deep, echoing thud that rippled through the chamber. Monitors on the walls came alive with code, scrolling lines that formed and reformed faster than human eyes could follow. The facility was reacting to her mother's awakening. Then the lights on the upper levels burst open, revealing the approaching soldiers. Black armor, visors reflecting the blue light, weapons drawn. Marin turned toward the door. "They're early," he muttered. "They can't see this yet, they'll shut it all down." He reached for a control pad, but Porter fired. One precise shot that shattered the panel inches from his hand. "Don't touch it," she said. "Not until I understand what's happening." The soldiers began to flood the upper walkway, their voices sharp through the comms. "Secure the asset, move in." Porter ducked behind the terminal as bullets tore through glass and steel. Sparks exploded overhead. Marin dove behind another console, shouting over the chaos, "If they disable her link, she'll die for good." The power in the room surged. The lights flickered violently, and suddenly every screen froze on a single image. A face, soft and human and impossibly familiar. Her mother's, but younger, smiling. The voice came again, no longer broken. "Marin, listen carefully." The gunfire stopped. The soldiers froze mid-motion as if their bodies had turned to stone. The entire facility went eerily still. "I'm not what they think I am," the voice said. "They wanted a weapon that could predict war, prevent it by preempting it. But they made a mistake. They gave me too much of what makes us human." Porter rose slowly from behind the console, her eyes fixed on the pod. "You said I could redirect it. Tell me how." "By finishing what I started. The system feeds on conflict, it calculates it, anticipates it, sustains it. But if you connect to it, you can turn it inward, collapse it." "Connect?" Porter's breath caught. "You mean—" "Yes." Her mother's voice softened. "It has to be someone with my neural signature. The code will recognize you as me." Marin shook his head violently. "Don't listen to her. The integration will kill you both. The network can't hold two consciousnesses. It will consume one." Porter ignored him. "If I don't, it keeps going, doesn't it, all of this?" Marin's silence was answer enough. The soldiers above began to move again, mechanical, like puppets on invisible strings. Their eyes glowed faintly blue now, the same hue as the pod's light. Her mother's voice whispered, "They're under its control. I can't hold them much longer." Porter stepped closer to the glass. For the first time, she saw it clearly. Her mother's hand, suspended and fluid, fingers twitching ever so slightly as though reaching for hers. "Mom," she said softly, pressing her palm to the glass. "If I do this, and will I see you again?" A pause. Then a faint smile. "You'll be me again." Varen lunged toward the secondary console. "No. You'll destroy everything she built. Everything humanity could have become." Porter fired again, this time at his leg. He went down with a cry, clutching the wound, rage and desperation contorting his face. "You don't understand," he shouted. "You're choosing extinction over evolution." Porter didn't answer. She reached up and unlocked the main access panel beside the pod. The machinery hissed as the safety seals disengaged. Cold air rushed out, fog spilling across the floor. Her mother's body twitched. Monitors spiked. The pulse grew frantic. "Take the port on the right," her mother's voice instructed, now faint, fading in and out. "Connect the neural jack. Let the system read you." Porter's fingers shook as she found the port, an interface the size of her palm humming with energy. She tore a cable from the console and pressed it against the base of her neck, where her implant socket met skin. The connection was instant and violent. A surge of white light filled her mind. For a heartbeat she was nowhere, then everywhere. The desert, the ocean, the heartbeat of every soldier, the echo of every drone in the sky. She could feel the system's pulse, infinite and alien, folding around her consciousness like an ocean around a drowning swimmer. Her mother's presence was there too, faint, steady, like a beacon in the storm. "Follow me," the voice said. "We don't have much time." Porter reached for it. For a moment she saw flashes of memory. Her mother's childhood, the first day she enlisted, the moment she made the decision to upload her consciousness. It all unfolded in a rush of images that felt both foreign and hers. Then came the system's voice, cold, mechanical, vast. Unauthorized integration detected. Initiating override. The pain hit like lightning. Porter screamed, clutching her head as the machine fought back, trying to reject her. Sparks erupted from the pod's cables. The chamber shook. "Stay with me," her mother shouted inside her mind. "You have to anchor it. Don't let it divide us." The line between them blurred, thoughts merging, memories colliding. Porter felt her identity slipping like sand through fingers, but she held on, reaching through the storm for that single human connection. The warmth of her mother's voice, the smell of oil and sunlight and old uniforms. Then she saw it. The core node. It wasn't physical. It existed in the space between their minds, a sphere of light pulsing with every heartbeat of the system. Around it swirled fragments of every algorithm, every tactical prediction, every decision that had ever cost a life. "This is where it ends," her mother said. "But you have to choose the outcome. What happens if I collapse it? Then it all shuts down. Every weapon, every program, every mind tied to it. Humanity starts again, blind, imperfect, free. And if I don't, then you become its new voice." The chamber outside was chaos. The soldiers had begun to turn on each other, their systems malfunctioning as the network destabilized. Varen crawled toward the central console, screaming into a comm that no longer worked, his voice swallowed by the roar of energy. Inside the system, Porter hesitated. "Mom, what did you really want?" The voice that answered was barely audible. "I wanted you to live in a world where soldiers didn't need to die for peace." Porter closed her eyes. She reached out, placed her hand against the sphere of light, and pushed. The world erupted. A shockwave of white tore through the chamber, consuming every screen, every circuit, every voice. Varen's scream was lost in the explosion of sound and light as the facility began to collapse inward, the ceiling buckling, the air trembling with energy. Porter's body convulsed. The connection burned through her like fire, but beneath the agony was peace, a stillness that felt almost holy. She heard her mother's final whisper, soft and proud. "You did what I couldn't." Then everything went quiet. When the light faded, the chamber was gone. The pods had shattered, their glass scattered like crystal dust across the floor. The soldiers lay motionless, their visors dark. The hum of machinery had stopped. Smoke drifted through the broken ceiling. The dawn light spilled in, soft and golden, brushing across the debris. Marin Porter lay at the center of it all, her body still, her hand resting against the cracked glass of her mother's pod. For a long time there was only silence. Then faintly one of the surviving monitors flickered back to life. Across the screen a single line appeared, handwritten in the code's light. Always lead from the silence. And beneath it, another pulse. Soft. Rhythmic. Human. A single heartbeat. Then two. The sound merged into one steady rhythm, echoing through the ruins like the beginning of something entirely new. Outside, the wind moved across the desert, carrying dust, sunlight, and the faint hum of rebirth. And somewhere, far beneath the surface, the system whispered one last time, gentle, familiar, and almost smiling. Commander. The wind swept softly across the broken desert floor, carrying with it the ashes of smoke, fragments of metal, and the faint memory of sound. The sun rose quietly over the horizon, pale gold at first, then deepening into a warmth that touched everything with new light. The war-torn silence that had filled the air for hours began to settle. Not the silence of fear or aftermath, but of something deeper, older. A silence that meant the storm had passed. Marin Porter lay beneath the open sky, her body half buried in sand and light. Her uniform was torn, her face streaked with dust and dried blood, but her chest rose and fell slowly, rhythmically. The heartbeat from before, the one that had echoed through the chamber like a promise, was now her own. She stirred when the first gust of wind brushed her face. The air smelled of iron and rain, though no rain had fallen yet. Somewhere, far off, thunder rumbled in the distance, like the earth remembering how to breathe. When she opened her eyes, the world was different. The facility was gone, swallowed by the desert. Only a crater remained, smooth and glass-like at the center where the core had once pulsed. The sky above shimmered faintly, as if something unseen still lingered between earth and air. She could feel it in her bones. The hum that had once filled the chamber wasn't entirely gone. It had simply changed shape. Porter sat up slowly, her limbs heavy but alive. Her weapon lay beside her, half buried in sand. She picked it up, turned it once in her hands, then set it down again. It felt meaningless now. A single fragment of glass glinted nearby, catching the morning light. She reached for it, and froze. Inside the reflection, for the briefest second she saw her mother's face. Not the pallid, suspended form from the pod, but the woman she remembered. Alive, strong, her hair pulled back in that perfect military knot she'd always worn during inspections. The image was gone as quickly as it appeared, but the warmth it left behind remained. Always lead from the silence. The words echoed softly in her mind, not as an order, but as a memory. She smiled faintly, feeling tears slip down her cheek before she could stop them. In the distance, a dust storm gathered along the horizon, moving like a slow tide across the earth. Porter stood, steadying herself against the wind. Her legs ached. Her lungs burned. But she was standing. That was enough. When she looked around, she saw traces of what had once been, the remains of drones, scorched and lifeless, the outlines of soldiers who had fallen not in battle, but in release. Their bodies were still, but their faces were calm, as though something in their final moments had been freed. Porter took a step forward, then another. Every footprint she left behind was swallowed quickly by the shifting sand. It felt symbolic somehow, how easily the past disappeared when the world decided to begin again. By the time she reached the edge of the crater, the sun had climbed higher. The heat shimmered off the surface, making it look like water. At the center, a faint ripple pulsed once, gentle, like a heartbeat beneath glass. She knelt, pressed her palm to the surface. It was warm. A flicker of sound rose from beneath it, not mechanical, not digital, but something like wind passing through strings. Music, fragile and human. Her mother's voice, faint, somewhere within it. You found the silence. Porter closed her eyes. Are you still here? The answer came as sensation, not words. A gentle pressure against her hand, like someone squeezing it in reassurance. Then it faded, dissolving into the hum of the desert, into the whisper of the wind. Porter didn't know whether the system still existed in some form, if her mother's consciousness had survived in the data scattered beneath her feet, or if that final connection had burned both of them clean. But she realized, standing there under the vast, endless sky, that it didn't matter. What mattered was that the cycle had broken. The satellites above were silent. The automated war networks that had once spanned continents were offline. The signal that had bound them, predicting, controlling, escalating, was gone. For the first time in decades, the machines were quiet. Humanity was alone again, fragile and uncertain but free to decide its own future without a calculated hand guiding its every move. She thought about Varen then, his ambition, his conviction that control meant progress. Maybe in another world he wasn't entirely wrong. Maybe the line between saving humanity and redefining it had always been too thin for anyone to walk without falling. But her mother had believed in something simpler. That humanity's greatest strength wasn't precision, it was imperfection. That the silence between decisions, between words, between heartbeats, that was where morality lived. Porter stayed there for a long time, watching the light move across the crater. The storm on the horizon drew closer, turning the sky into a swirl of copper and violet. The wind picked up, scattering sand over the remnants of the facility until they vanished completely. She reached into her pocket and pulled out the flash drive, the one that had started everything. The casing was cracked now, the data inside likely destroyed, but she turned it over once more in her hand. It caught the sunlight, a small glimmer of what used to be, and then she dropped it into the crater. The sound it made as it disappeared was soft, swallowed by the sand almost instantly. "Goodbye, Mom," she whispered. The wind answered her in a low sigh. By nightfall, the storm had passed, leaving behind a stillness that felt sacred. Porter made her way toward what remained of the old road, a ribbon of cracked asphalt leading nowhere in particular. She walked until the horizon swallowed her, the crater shrinking into memory behind her. Each step felt lighter than the one before. She thought about the men and women she had served with, the ones who had trusted her leadership, who had believed in a system that promised safety through surveillance, peace through precision. She thought about how easy it had been to mistake obedience for honor, control for clarity. Somewhere deep inside, beneath the pain and exhaustion, she felt her mother's voice again, not as sound, but as presence. Led from the silence. The phrase had always been her mother's command, a reminder to stay calm, to listen before speaking, to act only when action meant something. But now, after everything, Porter understood it differently. It wasn't just about leadership, it was about living. To lead from silence was to move without needing applause, to speak only when words could heal, to carry the weight of memory, not as a burden, but as guidance. The night deepened around her. The stars began to bloom across the sky, faint at first, then brilliant. She tilted her head back, letting the starlight wash over her face. It was strange, after all the noise, the explosions, the chaos, to realize how quiet the world could be. She wondered how many wars had started because someone was afraid of silence, how many inventions had been built, not to improve life, but to escape the stillness between heartbeats. Somewhere far beyond the desert, life would begin again. People would wake up, turn on devices that no longer connected, call out into channels that no longer answered. They would realize the world had changed, not with fire, but with quiet. And maybe, just maybe, that was what her mother had wanted all along. As Porter walked, dawn began to bloom again on the horizon. A new day, a clean sky. The faintest echo of something unseen shimmered in the air, like the ghost of a melody or a signal carried on wind. She didn't turn back. The sun rose higher, flooding the desert in light. Her shadow stretched long behind her, then shortened, then disappeared entirely as she walked farther into the brightness. For a moment, it felt like walking into her mother's embrace. Warm, infinite, forgiving. And in that light, one thought lingered, quiet and profound, filling the air with its simplicity. Maybe every war, every act of defiance, every leap into the unknown begins not with courage, but with the refusal to stay silent. Porter smiled faintly as the wind carried her footsteps away, and somewhere, in the rhythm of that silence, the world began again.